Tara Brown and the Swinging London Colour Revolution by Vic Jenham. Chapter 10, Part 2. With tensions between Nicky and my mother not relenting, I decided not to spend Christmas at Lugala for the first time in my life. Instead, I took up Paul's invitation to go with him to Liverpool, say hello to his family, and hang out with some of his old mates. I quickly accepted. It seemed like the perfect solution for an otherwise bleak-looking festive week. Christmas was still a very important family event, with lots of people travelling back to wherever it was they had come from, and many clubs and bars in London simply closed. So we had a lovely meal at home on the 25th, and next morning I flew with Paul to his hometown. Flying with a Beetle was no mean feat. We flew business class, of course. Security were forewarned of our arrival, so the illustrious passenger could be ushered in unnoticed, and Paul was wearing a fake moustache, sunglasses, and a cap, all the while trying to say as little as possible. The flight itself took less than an hour, which we spent drinking and smoking, and then it was off in a cab to Paul's father's home. Paul had made some arrangements and had mopeds waiting for us. I thought we could have a ride around town and I show you all the places, he clarified. We had great fun. It was cold, but the weather was stable and we soon picked up some joints to armor our happiness, and then we had an accident. We were on our way to his cousin Beth, who lived somewhere on the island across from the Mersey River, and Paul was going ahead with me following closely, and Paul shouted something about the bright moon, and whether he'd made the sudden move or it was me, I don't know, but our wheels touched and down he went, falling flat on his face. He first said he hadn't hurt himself, but it was actually a bad fall. His face was bruised and he was bleeding from lip and eyebrow, and he had broken one of his front teeth. "Oh, Mr. Handsome, that doesn't look too good," I said. Paul knew what I was talking about. His face was worth a lot of money. So he shrugged it off and said, "It'll be fine in a few days." But when we reached his cousin Beth's place and she freaked out upon seeing him, he had to admit it did hurt a lot, and she immediately sent for a friend of hers who was a doctor. The poor man almost fainted when he saw who he had to help, and did a rather poor repair job on the cut on his upper lip, shaking from fear he was going to mess up one of Britain's most beloved faces. "Do see a plastic surgeon," he implored Paul. "You don't want any scar tissue growing there." "I was thinking of growing a moustache, you know," Paul replied. We stayed at Beth's house that night, not in the mood to make it back to town, and had a rather quiet evening as far as I was concerned. Beth was an entertaining and beautiful woman who was quite a bit older than us. I completely understood why Paul had a secret crush on her. Early next morning, there was a telegram for me. It read, "Call immediately, John." Since I knew only one John who would send me a message like that, I left for a coffee and found my way to a large daytime bar nearby with two closed phone booths next to the toilets. I rang the number which had been included in the telegram and heard a well-known voice. "We know everything," the voice said. "Listen carefully. We want you to take Paul's place a couple of times, at least until his face has healed sufficiently for him to appear in public again. We understand he will probably tell you this is not necessary, but you must insist. It is important." But I can't play the bass," I protested. "You won't have to. Just a couple of photos of you with the rest of them, likely taken from afar. We can't tell those teenagers, as they are called these days, that their favorite Beatle has hurt himself. The girls especially are out of their minds, There may be some suicides if we do not keep this story under wraps. I couldn't help thinking that this was exactly what Sir John's organization had been aiming for, but I kept my mouth shut. How do I pretend to be him? I asked instead. Your looks will be taken care of, don't worry. For now, I need you to convince Paul this is a good idea. We can't have anybody to know about his lip, apart from you, his cousin and a doctor friend. And, Tara? Yes? See the good side of this. I'm sure you must be somewhat jealous of the fame your friends enjoy. That's fine. So why not get a feel for what it's like if you get the opportunity? Take it with both hands, my friend. You've got a point there. Of course I do. Just to put the situation in perspective, we would be very interested in knowing whether you can pull this off. Will the public be blind to the difference if we pretend there is none? That is really what we want to know. I was silent for a while. Do I understand correctly that you had been planning this all along and that Paul's accident is a happy coincidence? That is correct. But how did you know, and so soon? Sir John sounded slightly disappointed. Young man, we know everything about our products. Now go back and see what you can do. Keep me posted. Confused, I walked back into the cold morning. The presence of the sea was noticeable here in the salty dampness hanging in the air. Not the best place in the world to grow up, I thought. I wasn't too keen on fulfilling this assignment. Why not let Paul deal with it himself? And why the need to deceive the public? The idea some girls might commit suicide because their favorite pop star had split his lip seemed far-fetched. They wanted to know if I could pull it off. Fine. But why? It was true, though, that I was interested in being Paul, just to feel the admiration for once. That's the weirdest thing, Paul had told me, that so many people believe we are really good at making music. I mean, we're not bad, but there are better bands out there, we know that. The kids don't seem to agree with you. They are told what to think, what to feel. At Beth's place, I tried to persuade Paul of the need to stay out of the public eye for a while. It would really be better if you lay low until the worst of the swelling has gone, you know? In the meantime, you will be needing a stand-in. Like I said, I can grow a moustache. In a few days, nobody will notice anything. Will the record company agree? I threw in. Will you be allowed to perform like that? Why not? Paul had this innocent rebelliousness inside him, which would sometimes appear above the fray. You are the Beatles, I said. 3 handsome blokes and their funny drummer. Will the record company allow you to show your bruised face on TV? Will TV itself? I'd say the Beatles have a say in that, Paul remarked. If the lads are okay with me, I see no problem there. That was not the answer I was looking for. You know, I could be you. I went in overdrive. I know your pals. I'm relaxed around you lot, and I know how to behave myself. Paul laughed, carefully, so as not to hurt his wounds. But Tara, you look like Brian Jones. How can you be me? I agree I could pass for Brian from a distance, I said. But you and I are both Irish. Our difference is only our colour. I'm your fair cousin. I don't know what it was, but something seemed to trigger Paul's understanding of the situation. Well then, fair cousin of mine, he said after a short silence, why don't you dye your hair and we'll see who you resemble? We did so that same day. Cousin Beth revelled in the story. Let me take care of this part, she said, And Paul, you can stay as long as you want, you know that. And so, on the 27th of December 1965, with the help of a bottle of hair dye and some blush on my always very white skin, I became Paul McCartney. Well, not quite. The real Paul was beside me, but I certainly looked a surprising lot like him. Beth took a photo of the two of us with her old camera. "You're right there," said the real Paul. "You do look like me." While we were laughing about our discovery, I realized we had created a new problem. I had to be myself whenever I wasn't Paul. And Tara having his hair dyed at a time when there were inevitably rumors going around that Paul McCartney might have a stand-in did not seem to be a clever idea. I needed to get my own color back, and fast. "No problem," said Beth. "A bit of peroxide will do wonders." Indeed, half an hour later, I had my own hair back, albeit somewhat ravaged by all the chemicals. Beth suggested I got a good woman's wig, about shoulder length, and then have it cut back to the right model. She ordered Paul to give up a tiny lock of his hair and handed it to me, for the color. I folded the few strands in a piece of paper which I stuck into the inside pocket of my jacket. That same evening I returned to London and was back on the dance floor round midnight, where I met Nikki. "Your hair smells weird," she said. "What happened?" "I'll tell you tomorrow. For your ears only."